Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 8th City Council work session meeting. I know we have a lot of items about the budget. Looking forward to going through the position papers as well as the recommended operating budget. At this time, I'll turn over to our city manager, Mr. Archer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. You will find two printed documents provided for your reference this evening. The first is Budget at a Glance. This is a brief, user-friendly summary of the FY 2026 recommended budget, which will also be made available to the public at both tonight's and Thursday evening's hearings. The second is the packet which you should have received virtually regarding the FY 2026 recommended budget position papers, offering additional details on key areas of focus within the proposed budget. These briefs are intended to provide additional background and context on several key topics, including the city's work around artificial intelligence, the real estate reassessment process, and the full results of the recent Community Pulse survey. During today's session, we will begin with a brief series of presentations on three specific topics covered in the position papers. One, the impact of federal funding. There's been a lot of I think, anticipation and concern about what's happening at the federal level and how it will impact localities. The second is employee compensation. And the third is the work of the Office of Community Safety. These presentations will be delivered by Virginia Lovell, Director of Finance, Allison DiCioso, Director of Human Resources, and Sunithia White, Community Violence Prevention Manager. We'll begin with Virginia, who will start with an overview of the federal funding and its implications for the FY 2026 operating budget.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I will start with just a brief update on some of the changes happening at the federal level. I apologize that I will not necessarily be able to bring certainty to the conversation, but I will give you an update on how it could impact the city. Since the new administration took office in January, there have been some significant shifts in federal policy that I think we all are aware of. They've primarily been communicated through a series of executive orders. There have been over 100 orders issued to date. They touch on subjects ranging from reducing the federal workforce, immigration, labor policies, education, and most recently on foreign relations, including an order imposing tariffs on some of our trade partners. Of particular note, in late January, there was an executive order and an OMB memo that proposed a temporary freeze on all federal financial awards. The reason given for the order was to allow the administration time to ensure that federal awards aligned with their goals. Ultimately, that order was challenged in court and rescinded, but the federal administration continues to signal their intent to pause or eliminate funding for programs that don't align with the president's priorities. Obviously, federal funding is a critical component for our budget, for both the operating and the capital budgets. On the operating budget, the largest federal revenues come from Health and Human Services, the USDA, and HUD. The funding supports the administration of many of our human services programs, for example, TANF, SNAP, and Medicaid. Also provides programs for children and families who are vulnerable, such as foster care and adoption services. And the HUD funding supports the maintenance of our public housing and access to affordable housing for many of our residents. Federal funding from the DOJ and FEMA supports equipment purchases and training for fire and police, as well as funding for victims of crimes. For the CIP, we receive a significant amount of money from the Department of Transportation, mostly for maintenance of our streets and bridges and other transportation improvements. There are over 300 positions in the city that are partially or fully funded by federal funds. In addition to direct impacts, we really could obviously see some indirect impacts as well. Many of our local employers, JLab right here in Newport News, the Hampton VA, NASA have been or could be impacted by federal policy shifts. Any decline in employment could impact our consumer-sensitive revenues, meals and sales tax. They're estimated at over $76 million in the recommended budget. And of course, many of our regional agencies also rely on federal funding, including the school division, the CSB, HRT, and others. It is important to note that although we're in a strong fiscal position, it's not possible for federal dollars to cover all the direct and indirect impacts that could come from potential federal funding changes. And the situation is extremely fluid. We will continue to monitor and track federal actions, especially as the federal budget is being developed. If we see impacts, our focus is on meeting our legal obligations, which means paying our debt service, funding our pension, and funding our core services. New position, salary increases, and other new programs in the 26 budget will be implemented in a conservative manner to ensure we have a full understanding of impacts as they're coming down, and we may need to reallocate resources to make sure that we can maintain our critical operations. I wanted to be brief. I'll take any questions.
Has there been any indication of decreased funding for like SNAP and TANF benefits?
We haven't received anything directly that I'm aware of. I know that the federal budget, have been some conversations in the Senate, I believe, that could be on the table, but nothing has been passed that I'm aware of that cuts those at this time.
Go for it. I had a quick question. I know it's probably hard to answer this with it being known where we are with the budget and with some of the things that are coming down, but is there a time frame that we could have an idea from looking at what was shared in regards to projects that are already have started that are federal funded and it having to be maybe paused or other funds that we would have to put into those projects? What would a time frame be if we had to consider whether we had to go into some of our other funding opportunities to fund those projects that are started and then projects that we're looking at starting within the next year or so that are federally funded, if we have to make some changes or adjustments to what we would need to do for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I could give you a great time frame. We are still waiting. I think the federal budget development will probably be very eye-opening to where exactly we see shifts in funding. For our capital plan, the majority of the funding comes from the Department of Transportation. It's majority for streets and bridges. We do have a list excuse me, we do have a list already put together of all of our existing projects, where they are in their design or construction cycle, if they have federal funding, so that if we get any news on any of those grants, we know where we need to move. If it's already in construction, we'll likely need to continue to make that project happen. We're hopeful those funds don't get pulled back on projects that are already substantially in construction. If it's in design, we'll have to come back to the table and have that discussion as a broader city with the CIP on where those would fall in priority for city funding.
Can I just interject on that question? And that's a question I asked Bob. If you could speak a little bit more towards if we are awarded a grant and we're moving forward with that money, if the federal funds are pulled back, what is our, legality or how we can?
It's really going to depend on whether there is any particular grant agreement behind it. If there's a grant agreement and we've met the conditions and the federal government hasn't met the conditions, then perhaps we have a remedy there. Otherwise, it'll depend on the legislation surrounding the grant and whether there's that ability to claw it back or not. So it's really going to be case specific. Like Virginia said, there's really not a good answer that flows across the board. It's going to be case by case.
Yes, same. To piggyback, last year we approved that bicycle and pedestrian plan. Those funds, were they predominantly from the state, or is that federal dollars? That was one thing I was thinking about. I didn't know if anybody knew.
I know a significant amount of our pedestrian improvement funds are federal, HSIP, I believe. Craig, I don't know if you want to chime in on any additional information, but a significant amount of pedestrian improvement funds are federal.
And I'm asking because I am concerned about it. If those funds we don't receive, how much of a delay will that be?
I'd have to verify that. I know in the CIP we have some funding that we set aside for the design. We have in that district, we have 5 projects that we're going to be proceeding with, and then we have design monies that we have set aside for that right now. But aside, on top of that, we don't have any additional funds besides the design right now for those projects. So we have to get additional funds for that.
So that's one instantly impacted right now. The second one, Mr. Mayor, really a comment. I know if ever there was a time we needed our federal lobbyists to give us some insight. I don't know if I didn't see Jerry, so I was looking back there. Oh, there we go. maybe we need to get an update from them, at your discretion, of course, but I figured I want to mention it now.
No, so perfect segue, and we did not plan this. It's actually really good. If I could have Jerry come up and just talk a little bit about Jefferson Lab, because I think that's my top priority. I know there's a recompete that's been pushed out, but I think myself and Jerry are going to DC in 2 weeks, and the plan is to hit the White House for like shipbuilding, DOE, Jefferson Lab, and then I think DOT, but I'll let Jerry take it because it's her wheelhouse.
We have a trip planned next week, but I was also in DC last week, and essentially talking to everyone from all areas, they have no idea what's happening. With Jefferson Lab, it sounds like what has happened is across Jefferson Lab, not just across DOE, not just at Jefferson Lab, all the contracts that had certain words in them were pulled back. But the goal is really to just kind of reword the solicitations and put them out so that what they say is more in line with the priorities of the current administration. So they did extend the management contract, I believe, for SURA for several months. So it should be in good hands under the current administration until I think the end of the calendar year. By that time, there should be some more certainty around what's going on. As far as DOT, I haven't spoken to anybody at DOT, but that might be something we could add to the list for the next trip.
And so we'll be up there next week, and just thanks Jerry and our federal lobbyist team. We're gonna, shake hands and do all the DC stuff, and we'll have a report when we get back.
One last thing. Also, the Denby interchange is happening, the connection to 64. Is that going to be delayed because of these issues that we're having at the federal level? I can't remember if we were getting, or how much federal funds we were receiving in regards to that project. Okay.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything other than, right now, what we've been told, we're proceeding as normal, and so is VDOT. We haven't been told anything that would be delayed in any way.
Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, one last question. Now, I did see something regards to public safety funding. Could you, what was that specifically towards? I know it was something with public safety and then the witness protection, I believe it was.
Yeah, so we receive a couple different grants for FEMA for equipment and training. There's some grants for drones and other public safety type equipment and training for them. We also receive funding for the Victim Witness Program, which provides services for victims and witnesses of crimes to help them with the emotional impacts and navigating the court system.
So if that's pulled, what would be some of the potential adjustments that would be made, or that's?
So it's a
being
little
considered?
over about $1 million per year that
okay.
we receive there. So like everything else, it would have to be a conversation about what flexibility we have within the operating budget to cover those. Certainly public safety training would likely need to be had, but we'd have to work on what flexibility we had within the budget.
Thank you.
Sure.
That particular grant covers a majority of staffing. It's over 20 positions in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. So when Virginia refers to making priorities, that would certainly be one of them.
Thank you. I think we're going to move on to employee compensation and employee investment. Is that HR? Ms. Allison, thank you.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor. I'd like to brief you on some new implementations with our employee compensation, employee investment programs, and things that are happening from Human Resources. We are pleased to announce that the public safety STEP plan has finally been implemented. It went into effect in November of last year. Over 900 sworn employees were impacted. $4,355,000 in salary increases were implemented, and the average increase to sworn officers who received an additional amount of money was 8.5%. So this was a significant amount of money that affected all of our sworn public safety, police, fire, and sheriff. It was a major accomplishment, and we're really delighted with the results.
Can I just pause there and just say,
Sure.
thank you to the entire team. I know that was a lot of angst from where there was a mixture of Alan and Bo and the whole team who helped out with that, which we really appreciate, at least the entire team. But that was a priority, I think, of City Council to make sure that at the very base level that we have public safety up to a certain level. So thank you for all on council. Thank you for staff for all that hard work. We really appreciate it.
In addition, we have the implementation of the employee compensation, the general pay plan. That was phase 2 of this project. Phase 1 was the public safety step. Phase 2 is the general employee pay plan. This went into effect last month. 3/31 was the effective date. We had 2,000 non-sworn employees impacted by moving to a broadband pay scale. We developed broadbands which were different than the traditional ranges, and we moved every employee onto the new pay scale. We also are using market-based pay as a way to price jobs and salaries. So we have this is actually a very new feature in this pay plan. $2,055,000 in salary increases have been implemented, and for those employees that had to be adjusted to the new minimums of the new structure, the average increase was 7.5%. To bring you up to speed on some developments with our general wage increase, we commonly call it the GWI. Over the last 3 years, we've had a total of 16% of adjustments for employees. We have for this year a proposed 3% for eligible non-sworn employees. We've also made additional investments in compensation for our employees, and we've created a couple new programs. One of the more popular programs is our CDL program. It's our Breakthrough Bonus Program. We found that we had a critical need in staffing for employees with CDL licenses or certifications, and one of the ways we tried to encourage people to join the city was through a bonus program that we called the Breakthrough Bonus Program. In the first year, we implemented it last year. In the first year, we've had over 50 employees either apply and be hired with CDLs or bring other folks on board through referrals. So it's been a very successful program. We've also made adjustments in pay to the Commonwealth Attorney and Public Defender's Office. I will take any questions.
I'll start the first question. So I think everyone knows how where I stand on collective bargaining, but can you just talk to me about what you see that implications going forward next year or the next 2 years? Thank you.
Sure. I know the City Council will be reviewing the input from the Collective Bargaining Task Force later this year as they work toward their recommendations of the types of subjects of bargaining. Collective bargaining may provide employees a greater voice in their compensation and benefits. We are very pleased that we are already able to include employees in these compensation decisions through their participation in a steering committee. We also recognize that collective bargaining may add an additional cost for administration and bargained items. Given the ongoing uncertainty of the federal government and economy, we are mindful of this potential budget impact, and with other budget items, we'll approach the compensation and benefits in 2026 conservatively, just to assure that we are ready to respond to declines in revenue or increases in costs that were not reflected in the recommended budget.
Thanks, ma'am. I think the vice has something. That you did.
Yeah, I mean, I could do it now or wait. So the question I have really is for the jobs that have not been filled as of right now. But I don't think, is that a question for you now, or?
That'd probably be a question when we talk about vacancies. This is,
Okay, that's what I figured, yeah, gotcha.
but we're happy to talk to you about it.
No, it's all good.
We'll
Thank you.
defer for a few minutes.
We'll do, okay.
Anything else from City Council about the employee compensation or the employee investment? Okay, I think we're good, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the HR team present in the room who helped put all of this together.
I think next up we'll do community safety.
Good evening. So key functions of the office, and with the addition of the role I sit in, we're looking at the coordination of the CVI ecosystem. For those who are not aware of what the CVI ecosystem is, it's essentially connecting those who have the closest relationship to those who are or present the greatest risk of being impacted by violence, or those who are already actively engaged in violence. And so the best way to do that is build the organizational capacity of the organizations that are doing the work, and building connectivity so that when high-risk individuals or groups are identified, connecting them to resources very swiftly often helps to mitigate further involvement in violent activities. So what have I been doing, and what have we been doing? And I say we because city departments and other internal and external stakeholders. I've been looking through existing documentation and efforts. I was really excited to come to Newport News and see that this ball has been rolling for some time. Having individual stakeholder conversations, and just wrapped a series of community conversations that we held in person and online. And from that, we were able to identify collective insight to find out where folks feel they are with this work and where they would like to be, making it clear that we want to enhance what exists in the ecosystem and work to streamline processes, but also establish a way to assess the work that is being done. The strategy implementation identified will be based on data and what is working well and what is most impactful. Benefit and impact that we hope to achieve is bringing awareness and education. We have folks who would benefit from a better understanding of the different levels of prevention. We have prevention that is more like mentoring, which is wonderful, and it should never go away. However, we should make sure that folks are aware that secondary prevention is more of the intervention efforts that reduce retaliation and recidivism. Coordinating the ecosystem, making sure that folks know each other and what they're doing, really what they're doing, not what they think their role is or what it should be, so that when they come in contact with individuals who are in need of resources, they can connect them quickly. And then additional coordination across agencies to reduce redundancy and make sure that any resources that are applied for or provided are used efficiently and effectively. And then again, data-driven solutions. At the end of the day, we want to say, is anyone any better off? And so as we work with the organizations, we will be very, very intentional to make sure that we'll be able to answer that question at some level at the end, and helping the organization build its capacity so that they can do that. Because as you all know, funding streams change, and if we are not making sure they can tell the story data, both quantitative and qualitative, and then that will make it a little bit harder for them to go out and get additional resources. And then again, targeted prevention and intervention. Widespread prevention has proven many communities across the country well, but the targeted prevention and intervention in the areas of highest need with individuals of highest need and the appropriate resources is what's going to make sure we're doing things well and with fidelity. Next steps. Hope to hire a services liaison. That's the person that will work with organizations to make sure that the services and opportunities that they provide are delivered effectively, continuing to build those relationships with a focus on continuity, because things change. Many of the organizations that work in direct intervention receive federal resources. And so just like with the folks who spoke before me, we need to make sure we've got our thumb on that, so that as what they're able to provide is impacted, we're able to respond appropriately and manage what we expect the intended outcome to be. And then a family services specialist. One of the major concerns that comes out is folks are working with individuals, and those who have been in the human services realm or the public safety realm know that you very quickly realize in most spaces that once you work with the individual, either you have the opportunity to have conversations and build with the family to reduce involvement at all, or to help someone before they follow in someone else's footsteps. And just increasing an overall understanding. If we continue to do things for an individual and we don't get that back to the entire family or the household that's impacted, we will continue to see our efforts not be as effective as they could be. Questions?
So over the last 3 years, we've had the gun violence intervention program. Are you planning to talk to those different organizations to kind of glean what they've learned and then also help to streamline some of the processes you have in place, you kind of laid out in place to develop a plan, how to better utilize these organizations, as well as also we have also funded the, I think Riverside Mental Health Program, I can't recall the name.
Yeah, hand in hand, the
Yeah.
hospital
January?
violence intervention program.
Yeah, so are you going to bring all those things together and kind of build a big
Yes.
plan of action? Oh,
Yes. So if you would, if in your packet, this picture on the screen, that's an actual picture of the community violence intervention ecosystem. And it shows all of the areas that you've referenced. So credible messengers and interventionists, as well as the responders who are connected to the hospital intervention program or hospital violence intervention program. That's your first step. And yes, you have to connect them for them to be helpful. And the other thing that I referenced with connecting them to the stakeholders, they can't do it all. They can stop things, initially stopping that immediate area of confusion, but then they have to have access efficiently to the resources that they need to get to those folks, because they are the folks with the relationship. So I'll answer your questions backwards. I think that was 3 and 2. And then 1, meeting with those folks. When I came on, I've probably had, at this point, probably over 35 or 40 meetings with individual organizations. And so when I referenced being intentional with stakeholder conversations, reach out to every organization that's funded in that particular process to catch up with them in person, virtually, or over phone. And then also doing a little digging to find out the organizations who are doing the work that were not funded, because they are still a part of the ecosystem in the city. And so I've had some conversations with them over the course of the community conversation series, those who have participated. Provided some insight. So actually what you see in that circle at the bottom, the collective insight, the CVI ecosystem enhance it, streamlining, assessment, and strategy implementation, are all high-level references to the concerns that they brought to the table and things that they would like to see and things that they would like to learn about, because you can only do with what you know, right? And so that's one of our responsibilities in building their capacity to make sure that they have the best information in a timely manner, and that we appropriately work with them at their present level. We want to coach folks to performance. Folks have already given a lot in this work. They're doing good work. We want to help make them better.
thanks.
Yeah, I do got a quick question, and thank you for the presentation. Is it true, or I'm trying to get a gauge for how much domestic violence affects our community compared to not random acts of violence, but other kinds of violence? I think I read recently that domestic violence was the highest form that we had, but I don't know if that's true or not, and I'm trying to understand if that is.
So that is not my area. However, I will tell you that over COVID, the state of Virginia and the country saw an increase in domestic violence for obvious reasons. People who at other times would be able to escape the person causing the abuse, whether it's a child or a partner, by school, work, or et cetera. And so when you change that environment and people were contained, they were not able in many instances to get that relief. That's also something that we will talk about with our community partners. Currently, those who are in your gun violence intervention program are working on community violence, and that anybody who has mentioned to me about getting into the domestic violence realm have referenced or referred them over to the police division or other public safety partners who specialize or have specialized units to help with that, as well as community partners. So I will say there is some truth in that, but it's all statistics. It's how you're going to look at the numbers, because community violence at large, like you said, it's most violence, again, speaking from I guess the blessing that I have in my former position. The random violence typically is not so. Most of the violence that takes place across the country, as I believe is reflected in the city of Newport News, I'd have to follow up with the chief with that, is between individuals who know each other or have known conflicts with one another.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
So one thing, as I'm looking at our community support budget, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I'm looking at our community support budget and listening to, your role and what you're expected to do in the city, we do have a lot of organizations that are really helping people and families. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it.
Yes, ma'am.
All the people that we as a city fund. So I'm really hoping that with your position and the things that you're bringing to the table, that we can, really look at how we're spending our dollars to see who's giving us the best outreach or success for our dollars.
Yes, I agree. I hope through these processes, we'll identify the organizations. Like I said, there's organizations who do wonderful mentoring, right? We need them to be comfortable in that area. But to your point, we also need to build the capacity of the organizations to make sure that if they are saying that they are providing housing for those impacted by violence, how are we improving the processes so that
Right.
the organizations who are connected do not have to know someone or know the right person to call, so they are connected directly to that resource, so that hopefully in the future, when the budget office is reporting out on the return on investment from CSAG and other potential funding opportunities that we have, that we will at least be able to identify some process improvements in getting services efficiently to those who are impacted by violence.
So, and I'm just so excited to have you in this position. I'm looking forward to even better things in our city.
Any other questions?
Quick
Yes, sir.
question. Who creates the metrics that are used to measure the success of those communities, organizations?
Well, I believe in the previous iteration of the gun violence intervention program, we worked with some internal partners and a contractor. What we will do going forward is we'll utilize best practices and national models and partnerships to make sure that we are meeting the standards, so that when folks talk about the work they're doing in the city of Newport News at a larger scale, they will be able to easily understand that we are not interested in developing something that is not research-based. We want to be able to speak truth to power with actual data. You're welcome.
If there's any more, I think we're good. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Appreciate it. And I'll just say, just internal city council, as we have our one-on-one budget discussions, not for this year, but for next year, I think we just need to take a look at all those organizations, right? I think it goes back to ROI, because I think a lot of good being done, but to Councilman Vick's point, we need ROI attached to them, and I think Ms. Cynthia's role is going to help with that. So with that, I think we have to read 5 or 6 different disclosures, so I'll start before we go.
We have one.
Is there one more? Let's just read the disclosure, then you can jump in. That's fine. We'll read the disclosure, then we'll have the city assessor jump in. So I, Philip Jones, have a personal interest in the consideration and adoption of the fiscal year 2026 operating budget, as my wife is an employee of Riverside Healthcare, which is a business affected by the transaction. However, I'm not disqualified from participating in this transaction. My signed declaration is on file with the city clerk. We'll let Vice Mayor go next.
I, Curtis D. Bethany III, have a personal interest in the consideration and adoption of the FY 2026 operating budget, as I am an employee of Ferguson Enterprises Incorporated, which is a business affected by the transaction. However, I am not disqualified from participating in the transaction. My signed written declaration is on file with the city clerk.
I, Cleon M. Long, have a personal interest in the consideration and adoption of the fiscal year 2026 operating budget, as my wife is an employee of the Newport News Public Schools. However, I am not disqualified from participating in the transaction. My signed written declaration is on file with the city clerk.
I, John R. Ely III, have a personal interest in the consideration and adoption of the FY 2026 operating budget, as I receive a salary from the West Next for Success Foundation, which is a business affected by the transaction. However, I'm not disqualified from participating in this transaction. My signed written declaration is on the file with the city clerk.
We have one more.
I, Marcellus L. Harris III, have a personal interest in the consideration and adoption of FY 2026 operating budget, as my wife is a member of the Newport News School Board and I am an employee of the Bethea Family Foundation, both of which may be affected by the transaction. However, I am not disqualified from participating in the transaction. My signed written declaration is on file with the city clerk.
Bob, we good? All right, the lawyer says we're good. I think we're good. So I think next up we'll have the fiscal year 2026 city manager recommended operating budget. I think we're actually going to start with a brief overview by our city assessor, John Fountain. John, if you want to, let's do it. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, thank you. I'd like to introduce Mark Beasley. I'd like to introduce Mark Beasley here to my left. He's the residential supervisor, and this is Mike Edwards, he's our commercial supervisor.
And the reason that I asked him to come is I know there's a lot of, I think education needs to happen publicly about how we do a tax rate, right? City council controls like the tax rate, but we don't control the assessment, right? And it's an individual process. So we'll have this for this, and then we'll spread the video. Thanks.
So as some of you may know, the reassessment notices went out last Friday, March 28th.
Oh, yeah, we know.
I'm sorry. But anyway, we're just going to give you a quick overview, give you some numbers, some statistics and stuff like that. So, okay, first of all, reassessment is required by Virginia state law, and the Code of Virginia mandates assessments be made at fair market value. The total FY 2026 proposed reassessment represents an overall increase of 3.76%. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get 3.76%, but it'll even out or average out to 3.76. The residential parcels represent approximately 59% of the total value, while the commercial parcels represent about approximately 41%. The appraisal staff utilizes the three accepted approaches to value: the cost approach, the sales comparison approach, and the income approach. The time frame for the market study for valuation is January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. So we're gathering all the market data from the last calendar year. Informal office hearings are scheduled from April 14th to April 18th, 8 to 5. And applications to the formal hearings at the Board of Equalization are due September 1st, 2025. Mark Beasley will now discuss the residential reassessment in more detail and give you some more of the specifics of what was affected and what markets were affected.
John, let me just jump in right there. So
Yes, sir.
I think just for council, so after everyone gets their assessment, then they have the opportunity to appeal. Is that what you're saying in those meetings in mid-April? Those times they can come to your office?
Yes, well, we have an open door policy around, but April 14th to April 18th is the informal hearing dates.
How many of those do you get per year?
Not many, Mark. What would you say?
Residential side, maybe 50.
Maybe about 50.
Okay.
Calls and walk-ins.
Gotcha.
Very rare we get walk-ins.
It's a very, very low number.
I think I'll get more this year, yeah.
And I'm sorry, to clarify, are they disputing the assessed value? Or you can do that? I had no clue that you could.
It's kind of a random thing. Sometimes it's the assessed value, sometimes they just want to talk to you. It really is odd, but when it isn't what they're doing, they may be challenging the assessed value, and then we'll give our informal review and look at the statistics and the data and determine whether or not our review was off. And if it is, then we will make a correction to it.
I got you. And he's about to speak to that criteria to the assessment.
That's right.
All right, perfect.
Any more questions? Sure, okay.
Mark Beasley, I said I'll give a quick little synopsis of the residential side of the reassessment. About 49,100 residential properties in the city, about 3 class codes: residential single unit, residential condo, and residential 2 to 4 multifamily. Composition is about 44,114 single units, 4,659 residential condos, and 327 residential multifamily 2 to 4 units. The increases for the single unit were about 4.84% on average. For the condos, 6.21% on average. And for the multifamily, 6.08% on average. The median assessed value for 2025 was $259,100. For fiscal year 2026, the proposed median assessed value is going to be $272,300, which represents an increase of about $13,200. We have approximately 834 residential neighborhoods in the city. So the largest increase we saw this year was a neighborhood called Jennifer Square. It's about 28.4% overall. And I'll give a little synopsis. The average days on market for calendar year 2023 was 29, and for calendar year 2024 was 34, so it was a small increase, days on the market. And we also had 1,722 what we would call arm's length transactions on the residential side. And what that is, it's an able and willing seller selling to an able and willing buyer, no duress whatsoever on the open market. So. And when we looked at the overall assessment ratios for all the residential properties, we are running 99.36%. So what that's saying is our assessed values are roughly 99.63% of the total sales for the city. So 100% of market value is what we're required to do by state, and we're very, very close. So, any questions?
I'm sorry, so you said 100% of the market value comes from the state?
No, they require us to assess at 100% of market value. So if a house sells for $300,000, they want the assessed value to be $300,000 or as close to it as possible.
Okay.
So, and we actually send them our sales each year too. So, and an assessment ratio.
Got it. Very briefly, if you could walk me through the process to challenge an assessment.
Hopefully it starts with a phone call or walking into the office if somebody has a question about it. And I'll run through the process with them, tell them, pretty much what I just explained here. And then we'll go over the property description. And if we see any discrepancies there, or if they want us to, we set up an on-site inspection, no cost to them at all, and go out and look at the few key areas of units of comparison, condition, size of the property, and we'll remeasure it. Takes about 15 minutes or so. And usually, if we go that far, they're kind of satisfied afterwards, and we'll provide sales from the market. So I had a phone call earlier today. I was on for 25 minutes, and at the end of it, I had no idea houses were selling for that in my neighborhood. So, it's more of an informative thing.
Right. Thank you for that.
Yep.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Wow.
Mike Edwards is next.
Oh, let's do it.
Commercial data.
Hello, my name is Mike Edwards. I'm the Commercial Appraisal Supervisor for the city. At the outset of what I'm going to say here, commercial appraising or assessing is a little different than residential appraisals. We're based on market forces that drive the investment values of properties. When you buy a commercial property, you're buying an income stream. You're not buying a residence. So the dynamics of the entire situation cause the changes in the market. Just to go over some quantitative data, the apartments increased 2.5% over last year. They have a total value of $3.3 billion going into 2025-26. Commercial, what we classify as commercial properties, and that is to say retail, offices, and various attendant functions like that, were driven by volatility in the market, in particular with office space in the Class A offices, where vacancies have gone up and rents have been hampered because of the overall tendency of working from home and then having trouble refilling those spaces and so forth. That only went up 0.3% for the commercial side. Industrial was a little more robust. It went up 4.5% over last year, and what that has to do with is that when you have an industrial property, you don't have to necessarily have a fancy looking office to house your business and produce your goods and so forth. And so the utility of the functions is what really drives that industrial market. And a lot of times what you have are local, what are called non-institutional investors buying into that industrial market, and that is what the stability of that market has been maintained. One of the things that we've noticed with that in particular is the selling price per square foot has remained very resilient as opposed to the vacancies, which have been creeping up a little bit. Leasehold improvements went up basically zero, but they only represent like less than 0.5% of the overall assessed value of the properties. Multifamily is very similar to that. They have a very small share of the overall assessment base. And I guess I should say the apartments represent 14.2% of the overall assessment base. And I believe Mark and John covered most of that. If there's anything else I needed to review here. One of the things, too, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but just so you know, there is a think tank called Weldon Cooper out with the University of Virginia, and they produce taxable sales data for the city of Newport News, which I've tracked for a number of years. In 2024, it only went up 1.6% for all of the taxable sales that are available in the city. The the boldest increase in this, if you can call it that, was with the comestibles, the Walmarts, the Targets, and so forth, because people need those particular goods to maintain their standards of living and so forth. The discretionary spending items tended to go down on the retail side, and the industrial was fairly stable. The categories with the biggest increases were grocery stores, general merchandise stores, and believe it or not, restaurants, which I found kind of surprising myself, but maybe people need a night out. So at any rate, I've probably talked too much, and I'll go ahead and leave it open for any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very, very good, very good.
Let's go ahead and talk recommended operating budget. Is that the next one? Alan? Are we good? Yeah. Good? All right, perfect. So, sorry I missed that. So let's skip right to comments, ideas, and suggestions. We'll start this side. We'll go this side. We'll go to Councilman Harris, and we'll go around the table.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Nothing.
Only thing I had is, it'd be nice at some point to actually have, maybe a work session around this AI, especially with the property compliance monitoring program. How's it gonna be deployed?
So I'll reveal a little secret that we're planning. And this hasn't been shared with any of you, most importantly, because you will provide me input about your next strategic retreat. But we plan to have a whole section at the retreat detailing the progress that we're making with AI in codes and talking about some other AI areas as well. So we were also thinking on top of that we'd be able to share with you the work that we've been doing around our housing policy and how we want to roll out those policies that shape the direction that the city and the city council want to move in the future. And then also, thirdly, we will have soon the results of the work that we have contracted out to review all of our permitting processes. And so that will give us a third look on this kind of important area of work as we proceed in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to congratulate Curtis on his new chapter of CAPA. I went to his thing this weekend and I saw all the guys stepping, and I was waiting for Curtis to step in the line, but he ain't stepped. He was too busy talking business. So congratulations on your new endeavors of joining your new fraternity.
Congrats.
Appreciate you.
Turn over to you.
I don't have anything.
All right. Just two things. I was given this. So we have two of requests ready to be voted on. As a reminder, we already had the signatures for Councilman Ely, the Crimson Thunder. That was for $2,313. Can I have a motion to approve that?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Vick.
4.
Vice Mayor Bethany.
4.
Councilman Ely.
4.
Councilman Harris.
4.
Mayor Jones.
4.
Councilman Long.
4.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Thank you. Next up, we have from Councilman Coleman. I know he's going to be out this entire week, but we were a title sponsor for the NNPD, the Friends of the Badge Breakfast, at $10,000. That's what we do every single year. We already have the signatures. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Vick.
4.
Vice Mayor Bethany.
4.
Councilman Ely.
4.
Councilman Harris.
4.
Mayor Jones.
4.
Councilman Long.
4.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Thank you. And then just for next week, so that way I have the forms here. We just need people to sign them. From Councilman Harris, the Books on Bikes. And then we have Rich Neck Elementary Archery Program. So we'll do that next week. I just want to, we said we're going to talk about it and then we'll vote on it next week. So those are the items that I have for the council contingency. And then I would just say for council, it's budget season. So for the next 2 months, that's sort of, all that we're going to do. So we'll set up the one-on-one meetings and sort of the process. But just once again, thanks to Cleon and to the Vices for that. Really, just the whole finance committee, as well as the staff doing a lot of the work, probably 99% of the work. But we definitely appreciate it. And I think we'll have a pretty smooth budget process. I think that's all I have before we go into close. You good? You three are good? 1, 2, 3. All right, take us into close, Cleon.
I move that pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, subsection 1 and 3, the council hold a closed meeting for the purpose of 1, discussion, consideration, and interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, or employees of a public body, the subject of which is discussion or consideration of the performance of a council appointee. And 3, discussion or consideration of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining, negotiating strategy of the city, the subject of which is the potential disposition of publicly held real property in the northern section of the city.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll.
Councilwoman Vick.
4.
Vice Mayor Bethany.
4.
Councilman Ely.
4.
Councilman Harris.
4.
Mayor Jones.
4.
Councilman Long.
4.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thanks all.
What is NLC? What is that?
No. Yeah, no, I'm gonna make sure. That's the first thing I'm gonna do.
It's my new handbook. I keep
We're good?
following on.
All right.
Councilman Long?
I move that members of the council certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matters are lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion for which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting by the council.
Second.
Moved and seconded at this time. Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Vick,
4.
Vice Mayor Bethany,
4.
Councilman Ely,
4.
Councilman Harris,
4.
Mayor Jones.
4.
Councilman Long.
4.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Before we adjourn, we have the legal authorization to get books on bikes for $3,000 sponsored by Councilman Harris. At this time, may I please have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Councilwoman Vick.
4.
Vice Mayor Bethany.
4.
Councilman Ely.
4.
Councilman Harris.
4.
Mayor Jones.
4.
Councilman Long.
4.
Motion carried, 6-0.
We stand adjourned.
Oh.